wed my June bug on a June day bright. Love that bug forever neath the blue June moonlight. At the age of 28, Tyler Murray, the sole heir to the Murray rust remover fortune, was about to be married, and never had a bridegroom been more enthusiastic about his prospects. She's the most wonderful woman you can imagine, he'd tell anyone who'd listen to him. She's beautiful, she's funny, she's got common sense, and she always takes really, really good care of me. And today, Susan Samuels was going to marry him. How could life possibly get any better? Actually, no one was surprised that Susan would want to marry Tyler. Everyone considered Tyler to be a great success, and Tyler agreed with them. Well, why shouldn't he? He'd been a good athlete in high school, a popular fellow and an outstanding student in college, and for the last 6 years in his father's multi-million-dollar business, he'd earned a reputation as a hard-working, innovative manager. So naturally, he assumed that his marriage, like virtually everything else he'd ever tried, was sure to be a great success. And today, Susan Samuels was going to marry him. As he dressed for the drive to church, Tyler sang over and over again the song that was playing in his heart. Gonna wed my June bug on a June day bright. Love that bug forever neath the blue June moonlight. Tyler put on a dark blue tuxedo with a handmade ruffled shirt, shiny new black shoes, and as a finishing touch to his outfit, he pinned on a white boutonniere, purchased specially for the occasion. A few miles away at her parents' home, Susan Samuels was looking forward to the wedding too, but the song in her heart was a little more cool and cynical than Tyler's. You see, Susan had been married once before, and so she had a greater appreciation of some of the things that could go wrong in a marriage. It wasn't that she didn't like Tyler. She really did. But when she was completely honest with herself, she did have to admit that the millions of dollars that he was destined to inherit did make him somewhat more attractive to her as a husband than he might have been otherwise. Still, Susan was optimistic. I really think it's going to work out this time, she said to herself as she dressed for the drive to church. But even if the marriage fails, and I only take a few $1 million in the settlement, I'm confident that today's ceremony will always be remembered as one of the loveliest pre-divorce rituals this town has ever seen. As she dressed to the drive for church, As she dressed for the drive to church, Susan sang over and over again the song that was playing in her heart. In a little while, just another hour, I'll have all I'll ever need, status, money, power, la 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 la, la 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 la. Susan put on a dark green dress, matching high-heeled shoes, and as a finishing touch to her outfit, she put on a broad-brimmed white hat with a green ribbon tied around it, purchased specially for the occasion. Over 500 guests had been invited to the wedding, but Axel Martin, an almost forgotten high school classmate of the bride, was not among them. But Axel wasn't going to let the absence of an invitation stop him from attending. No. After all, today was going to be the biggest day of his life, too. I'm a failure, I'm a failure, I'm a failure, screamed Axel again and again. They all hate me, he yelled as he slammed another book against the wall. It was true Axel had had more than his share of frustration. Even as a child, he'd had difficulty making friends. He'd never gotten a hit in a baseball game. Usually the other kids wouldn't even let him play. And during the past 10 years, he'd held numerous jobs, most of them very briefly. But the one event that most symbolized Axel's sense of failure to him was a time 14 years before when he tried to reach out from his isolation and loneliness. It was at the freshman dance at his high school. And there was this one girl in his class who seemed just magical to him, and he really wanted to get to know her. After watching her from across the gym for almost an hour, he finally got up the nerve to speak to her. Would you dance with me? He barely whispered. "Oh, gross me out, no!" cried the young Susan Samuels, and she literally turned and ran to get away from him. All the people standing nearby doubled over with laughter, and Axel slunk back across the gym floor feeling humiliated. And when he finally turned and looked back across the room, several of Susan's girlfriends were laughing and consoling her, because how could a horrible geek like Axel possibly ask anyone to dance? Axel had remembered that painful moment every day for the last 14 years. And today he was going to get even, not just with Susan Samuels, but with the entire world. "This is close to having a June wedding as I'll ever get," snarled Axel as he dressed for the drive to church. Axel put on his one brown suit, rather badly wrinkled, a scruffy pair of shoes, and as a finishing touch to his outfit, he put a .38 caliber pistol in the inside pocket of his suit coat, purchased specially for the occasion. And as he dressed for the drive to church, Axel sang over and over again the song that was playing in his heart. "Maybe, maybe, maybe if my gun goes bam, someone's gonna finally see who I really am. Maybe, maybe, maybe if my gun goes bam, someone's gonna finally see who I really am." The three all left for church about the same time. Tyler driving a brand new Cadillac convertible, purchased specially for the honeymoon. Susan driving a 2-year-old Toyota, purchased because she'd gotten a great deal on the financing, only 2.9% with no money down. And Axel driving a 15-year-old Ford, rusty and leaking both oil and transmission fluid rather badly, purchased because it was the only running car he could find for $75. And as the three drove toward the church, each one was singing over and over again the song that was playing in their own heart. "Gonna wed my June bug on a June day bright, love that bug forever 'neath the blue June moonlight. In a little while, just another hour, I'll have all I'll ever need, status, money, power, la 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 la. La 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 la. Maybe, maybe, maybe if my gun goes bam, someone's gonna finally see who I really am. Maybe, maybe, maybe if my gun goes bam, someone's gonna finally see who I really am." The Toyota was the first car to arrive at the church, and as Susan walked up the steps, she looked over her shoulder and smiled as she saw the Cadillac coming into view. But as the car entered the intersection, Susan saw another vehicle run a stop sign at a high speed, smashing into the convertible, causing it to roll over several times, hurling Tyler to the pavement, into the path of the oncoming Ford. Reflexively, Axel slammed on the brakes and skidded to a stop just a few feet in front of Tyler's inert body. Susan's hat went flying as she raced across the parking lot. A crowd gathered and an ambulance was called. Susan knelt down and held Tyler's bleeding head in her hands and whispered to him, "Don't die, baby. Please don't die. At least not before I'm your beneficiary." The ambulance finally arrived, but it was too late. Tyler was dead. Susan wasn't rich. And Axel returned home just as confused and frustrated as before, not even realizing the irony that he'd managed to stop his car just in time to avoid running over the man he'd intended to shoot at the altar. This would dawn on him later. But by the next day, the song in Axel's heart wasn't playing quite so loudly. His rage had peaked and begun to diminish. Without knowing exactly why he went, he decided to go and pay his condolences to Susan. She was very surprised, but somehow touched that he had come. About a week later, he called on her again, and though he didn't say much, he somehow conveyed to her that he understood the anger and frustration that she felt at Tyler's death. And it was true, because no one understood frustration quite like Axel. After he called on her several more times, Susan began calling Axel on the phone, and they started taking long walks together. Susan couldn't quite explain it to herself, but for some reason she decided she really liked Axel. Much of his frustration was obvious. During the next year, Susan helped him through the loss of 3 more jobs, but much of it he kept hidden from her. He never told her about his gun or his plans for her wedding with Tyler. Axel was determined that Susan should never hear that song that was still playing softly somewhere in his heart. One day, much to Axel's astonishment, Susan asked him to marry her. Well, of course he said yes, and so almost 2 years to the day after Tyler's death, Susan and Axel were married. Susan still doesn't know it, but on their wedding day, Tyler wore the gun under his tux coat as a good luck charm. Susan's family was somewhat less than impressed with her choice of Axel as a husband. It seemed quite a come down from her previous engagement to Tyler, but it seemed there was nothing to do but give the hopeless young man a job in the family-owned lumber yard. And at first, this went just as badly as all the others. But with Susan's encouragement, Axel overcame his initial fear of power tools. He was good at math and became a good construction estimator, and he gradually learned how to deal with customers and suppliers alike. It seemed like one success just led to another. Susan doesn't work anymore. She stays at home and takes care of the couple's beautiful new baby. She feels very happy and safe with Axel and never thinks about getting a divorce. Once in a while, though, maybe once or twice a year, when he is all alone, Axel takes out his gun and just looks at it. Thinks about how his life has changed since he purchased it and since he married Susan. Even though he's never shared it with his wife, that gun is more a symbol of his marriage to him than the ring that he wears on his finger. This Saturday will be Susan and Axel's 6th wedding anniversary, and they're planning a huge celebration. And on Monday, when Axel goes into work, he's going to be named the manager of the new lumber yard that the family's opening in a nearby town. Susan will share his feelings of joy and happiness and success. She feels very happy and safe with Axel, and she never thinks about getting a divorce. But I wonder how she'll feel if she ever hears that song that's still playing very softly somewhere in Axel's heart. Maybe, 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 ba, 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 ba. Ba 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 ba.